The Sober Pod is proudly sponsored by Axiom's Health, the first of its kind where treatment from drug and alcohol addiction is brought to you in your home. It's a full customizable treatment plan that includes medical care, individual counseling, family therapy, acupuncture, and peer support recovery, to name a few. For more information, visit us at axiomshealth.com. And on to the show.
I've been declared as well. Let's high five for declarations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
So that's where it was.
What have you been declared?
Insane.
The Sober Pod. The Sober Pod. The Sober Pod. The Sober Pod. Call your sponsor. Call your brother. Call your mother. Show starting in 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey! Welcome!
What's up, everybody?
Welcome to the Sober Pod.
Yes. Welcome to the Sober Pod?
That's it.
Okay.
That's
all right. Yeah.
what we're called.
For a second, I forgot the name of our own podcast.
It happens.
All right. We are your hosts, Sam,
Devin.
And Chris.
and we welcome you to a new podcast on the airs
Yep.
that we have been excited to bring forth. And we thought about talking immediately about the who and the why of this podcast.
That's right.
Who are we?
People, human beings, floating in space.
Floating through space.
We are three dudes in recovery
Yeah.
that about a couple of weeks ago met and discussed coming forth together and bringing a podcast.
Well, we didn't meet a couple of weeks ago. Like, we met.
Oh, yes.
Like-
We met about 10 years ago.
Was it 10? No, was it 10 years
Coming
ago?
up on 10.
Me and you, yeah, 10 years.
Yeah.
And then Dev, like 9 years, 8
Yeah.
years, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Strong Ocho.
Wow.
But we met as a group a couple of weeks ago.
And talked about the podcast.
Yeah.
So
And then which gets us into the why. You know, why did we want to do this podcast? And my answer to that is that for me it was a calling that we start a podcast about recovery and cover topics where you do hear in some meetings, or you'd hear about these topics or read about these topics in certain books and stuff, such as spirituality and networking with other sober people. Topics such as sponsorship and what is that, and other topics as sobriety and being young or old in sobriety, and how we continue being sober on a daily basis, a day at a time, you know. And so I called Chris up that night when I thought about maybe we should bring that to a podcast. And Chris immediately agreed. And he said, I think you said something about, like, I've been thinking about that.
oh man, I've been thinking about it for at least a year,
Yeah.
wanting to do something
Yeah.
utilizing this type of platform to just create content for extra content. Because, you know, I know for me, I always try to look for stuff when I'm driving or when I'm, you know, walking the dog or whatever to just absorb and listen to, and anything to do with recovery, I'm always, you know, all ears on. And, you know, one of the things the three of us talked about was, let's get into some topics, man, and let's start talking about why we do some of the stuff we do in sobriety and in recovery. That we just sometimes you come in and sometimes you just sort of have to accept that that's what we do, because that's what we do. And if you want to do this recovery thing, then you're just going to have to do this, right? But we talked about, let's talk about these things. Like, why do we do some of these things? Let's have a discussion on it. Some people might be interested in hearing that. So we'll see if they do.
Yeah, and I like that we're about to cover things. When we first come in, we talk about there's some basic things we need to do, and some of us do it. Others are not capable of doing it now. Maybe they'll come back and do it later. But what about between those things, right? Like between the lines of the things that we do in recovery. So you come in, they tell you to go to certain meetings, and you do. They tell you get a mentor or a sponsor, and you do. And the stuff that we really wanted to cover was the things that are in between those steps that we take when we first come in. And well, not only when we first come in, but during and especially in later recovery. Yeah. I got two guys in here that I look up to when it comes to recovery, and I see them approaching, for me, sometimes a seemingly hard life to approach. And I look up to them, and I want to know how they do certain things. And they've always shared with me. You guys have always been open to me. And what's cool about that is, well, why don't we just air it out and see if it gets caught somewhere out there in the ether? If there's... And the calling that I talked about was really, my envisioning was of someone needing to hear us on a certain night, and they end up hearing us and maybe getting something out of it. And if that was ever to happen, my job here is complete. And I've done what I set off to do, what we set off to do.
Yeah. Just want to note that we don't think we're experts in this thing, right? That's the last thing we want to try to convey. We want to have fun. We want to discuss recovery. But we know that we're just three dudes. So we're just three people. And we all each have our own opinion about stuff. And, some of us, I think not some of us, all three of us are very passionate about our sobriety and our recovery. But all three of us have recovered in different types of ways, different types of roads, all sort of leading to one place. But just want to convey that we don't think that we're experts. We're not starting this podcast because we're experts.
Right. You will rarely hear on the show, and I can guarantee it, although this is episode 1, but you will rarely hear us give feedback in terms of, well, what we think you should do is, that's not really what we do. I don't think it's even what we do out there either. Like even when we sponsor men and stuff, I don't really think it's our style per se, right, Dev?
I mean, I've had periods of being that guy. You like that. What is it? The 2-year syndrome, as they call it, or whatever. Like you've gotten past
the 2-year syndrome that lasts 3 years. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You've gotten past like that early stage, like I'm angry, or at least I was angry, and like this is crazy, and this isn't gonna work, and this is and then you start like getting into the groove of, like I can actually live sober, and this is working, and I figured this all out.
Right, and now you just need how to do it.
Yeah, like here's the prescription, and kind of like you were just talking about earlier, like how you come in and it's like, here's the formula. You go to your 90 meetings, 90 days. You do this. You do you call your sponsor every day. Call one of your brothers every day.
Yeah. Call your mother.
No, I mean like literally like when I got sober, like it was
call your mother.
It was literally like call 3 people a day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was the thing. You call 3 people a day, and so it's like, so I would I mean I've had, but you're right. Nowadays, no, I don't subscribe to thinking that I know any sort of expert in this. Like there's
try not to tell people what to do.
Yeah, everyone's recovery is different. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. So it looks different and how that's going to go, and so I've definitely learned that that's what it is. But I did have the phase. I think I've seen a lot of people in the phase. There's everyone goes through their stages.
It's a rite of passage in a way. A lot of times in recovery where you see somebody sort of like, oh man, those guys ain't about nothing, man. Right. They're not doing anything, man. But and then you're just like, you must have 2 years. You must be coming up on your 2.
Yeah. The reason you're feeling that way is, well, you haven't had a service position. How many service positions do you have? Well, that's your answer.
Yeah. And he's talking to someone who has like 35 years sober.
Yeah.
That's the worst, man.
Yeah.
Well, if you had a service position still, you'd probably be okay. Yeah.
Probably be okay.
Real quick before I forget, we are recording, and we will be recording from here on out, as far as we know, at the Blue Room Studios.
Blue Room Productions.
Blue Room Productions in Herndon, Virginia. And thank you to our dear friend Devin, who's an engineer / recording extraordinaire.
Man, he's a beast.
He is a
this
beast.
is
You're a beast, Devin.
fantastic.
No, guys.
You know that? Yeah. Shucks.
Shucks. Knock it off, all right? Knock it off. Hold your horses.
Oh, let's tell the listener about our email address and what we're looking for.
thesoberpod@gmail.com.
Boom.
And we really want you guys to write in
Please.
thoughts,
Yeah.
feelings, questions, comments. We'll definitely drop shout outs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Devin, you look like you really want to say something.
I'm thinking.
Okay. What a luck. He's just staring at the mic, shaking his head, and you think words are just going to flow. But
a bunch of
evidently
things
he's
were like
thinking.
rolling through my head as you guys getting like, I was like, man, what else could you guys send us? Like, you
Yeah.
could send us like, tell us like what we're like, be professionals. Tell us how terrible our podcast is.
Could do that. Yeah.
If you want.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then we'll just delete your email.
Yeah. Well, we
Send us
might
send us-
save it. We
Send
might.
us pictures of your cats, you know. Like,
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Our inbox is at 1 right now. It's that welcome to Gmail.
Yeah.
Oh,
Email,
man, they
that's-
sent us an email?
Dude, Gmail's
Awesome.
nice, man. They're nice like that.
That's one. Soon
So
enough, we're not going to be able to keep up.
Gotta get
Yeah, right.
email moderator.
Yeah.
But the thing we would like to see is if somebody's coming up on an anniversary in their sobriety or a milestone in their sobriety, they want to, they want to share with us. We'd love to say your name and
Please, yeah.
and give you a quick shout out. And I think Devin has said it over a few times with us meeting about this thing is that we want you to be a part of this as much as we're a part of this.
100%.
You know?
And we would love like any sort of topics that you've like thought about that you're like, why do we do this in recovery? Or like, so, some sort of thing that like we've probably thought the same thing and just stored away in our heads. We would love to discuss that.
Yeah.
So
That would be cool. And another thing that we are going to do, I think, in the near future is bring guests in of people that we know and admire and respect in recovery and have them sort of join in on the conversation and talk about certain topics that we've mentioned earlier. And we have, every time I say this, I feel myself getting super excited about, we just have so many friends in recovery, and we worked hard to get and keep those friends, but we have a lot of people interested in coming and sharing about their own recovery, their own life and stuff, and how they approach these certain topics,
yeah.
I don't think,
The more the merrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring them in. Bring them out.
Bring 'em on.
Send them down. Bring them on.
Bring him in, bring him out, send him on, and bring him on.
And
Sounds like we got a hip hop song on our hands, boys.
yeah, we should stop recording this and get back in the studio. And
Yeah.
Oh, what a night, though. What a night tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Tonight is the
Yeah,
night
this is-
we sealed
This is
the
it.
deal on the jingle.
yeah,
We're pretty proud of this jingle.
The Jingalinsky.
We know there's a lot of jingles out there in the universe, and our pod has just gotten deployed into that universe. We understand that. We're humble,
We are lining
We're
up with the
humble.
best of them, yeah.
but we're excitedly humble
Yeah.
about this kick-ass jingle that we have composed.
totally.
We got it already registered with all of your performance rights organizations. We plan on going down to Nashville soon to shop it with, some
With who?
companies and some people. Get some placements. We can't talk about it yet, but we're excited about it.
Yeah, we can't talk about it. No, but in all seriousness, when we were recording the jingle, because we are recording from a professional, real deal studio, right? So you got the board, I'm sure you guys have either seen it live or you've seen it on TV or in the movies or whatever. And it was one of those deals where we came in and there's the huge board and mics, and we recorded each part of what we do separately. And we'd run back in the room and listen to it and run back and add another track. And it was just so exciting, man.
Yeah.
It was so exciting tonight.
Yeah,
Blast.
that's good.
Made my day. Straight
awesome.
up. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, let us know what you guys think about the jingle.
yeah,
Yep. Oh, and another thing too is that we're going to be performing our jingles.
We're going to try to bring it live to you.
We're trying to bring these jingles live for upcoming episodes.
Yeah.
We're encouraging guest participation.
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, we'll see. Like, let's,
Come on, man.
Like
on,
we'll
come
do
on.
it, and then we'll
You're
like
getting
listen
shot
to
down.
it, and if it's not good, we're just gonna replace it with the one we did tonight.
Right. Yeah. And if we do that 3 times in the beginning, we're just going to continue doing that for the rest of the life of the podcast.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well,
Devin really wants to do it live.
I really want to do it live. No other podcast does it.
it's true. It's true. In terms of originality, I don't think a lot of people do it because they're professional, but
Hey, we can be professionally improvisational.
yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. I mean, we are either musicians or we love music, but it's doable.
We'll move on. We'll move on
Yeah.
from this here.
Let's talk.
We're gonna
Well,
cut-
yeah.
We're gonna cut this little convo here.
No, I love it. We should keep it. I think we should talk a little bit about how we met, real quick. What do you guys think?
That's one of my favorite topics.
Perfect.
So, do you want me to, or do you want you?
Yeah, Chrissy, go for
All
it.
right. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think me and Sam first met, and that was, I guess, 2009, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we were both waiting to go to rehab.
Yes.
I was, what was I doing? I was drinking alcohol, and I was taking Suboxones, trying to get my Xanax on here and there. In my mind,
AKA you were sober.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, I was sober. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. In my mind, I was sober because I was a heroin addict.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't doing heroin. So when anyone would ask me I was clean, I'd say, of course, yeah, I'm not using heroin. But I was drinking every day and taking subs every day and taking Xannies. And then I was on probation, supposed to go into rehab and go into these waitlist groups. And I met Sam there. And what were you in there for, Sam? What was your deal?
I was residing in a psych ward at the time because I had, as they so eloquently say in the rooms, given it all away. And that was my bottom. So at that point, I was going to the waitlist groups because I had really, really given up. And I was waiting to go to rehab. And so I was doing all these things that I needed to do because that's what the counselors told me to do. And one of them was to go to waitlist groups and wait until you go to whichever rehab it's going to be. We don't know yet, but that's our decision, not yours. I said, okay.
Was that your first time in a mental ward? It wasn't, right?
It was.
It was.
It was. Yeah. This was like, I went there and I went there to stay.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
there for a minute.
Yeah, moving
Yeah,
in.
you were like, what was it? It was months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was about 3 months
3
between
months, yeah.
the hospital and then the psych ward and then,
That's heavy duty, man.
yeah, man. And then there's an institute here in
that's
Northern Virginia that I ended up going there. And the people that you end up meeting there, are people that are at the end of their rope and people like the people that you see on TV that are not guilty for reasons of insanity, but you never see them on the streets, are there where I was residing.
Yeah.
I met a lot of those people.
Instead of prison,
Instead
they
of
go
prison,
there.
they go there. And so I would take, and my aunt, God bless, shout out to my aunt.
Shout
God bless her, Zainab. She was paying cabbing me from the psych ward.
Oh.
Like my family was like anything but you come in here.
Yeah.
We'll pay for your cabs.
Yeah.
And they were sending me to waitlist groups where I met Chris.
Yeah.
But it was because of everything that Chris mentioned. Not much alcohol, but hey, man, if that's what there was, I'm in. But a lot of benzo use. And I was at some point declared insane by the state. If
Because
you guys
of
did not know.
benzos. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what benzos ended up really. When you look down to bare bones, that's exactly what they caused me to do, is just go insane. So I was in a 3-day blackout that I ended up in the psych ward for.
I've been declared as well. Let's high five for
High five.
declarations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
I've
So that's
been
where it was.
What have you been declared?
Insane. I remember.
Some people are, declared upstanding citizens, and some people are declared humble, and
I had the multiple
declared
day
insane.
blackout too from that. Like the last thing I remember was one last thing I remember was like one of the doctors that I was under the care of
Yes.
saying, "What you're experiencing, Mr. Spear, is what we call a psychotic mania."
Ooh,
And I was like, "Oh,
those are two
that's
words.
a hell of an experience.
okay,
Yeah.
Those are two words somebody under the influence does not want to hear.
yeah." Like,
Or that you do want to hear.
no, I didn't want to hear that one.
You don't want to hear that one?
Nah.
Because you knew some trouble was, you were headed to some trouble at that point. Psychotic mania.
Yeah.
coming at you.
Bam. Bam. Bam.
And bam, psychotic mania.
And someone say, left turn hard.
Going back to when
Anyways.
Oh, yeah.
when
Yeah.
we met.
Yeah. Psychotic mania,
yeah.
yeah. So we were at the waitlist groups, and Sam, you went into treatment first.
That's
and
right.
I had to keep going into waitlist, but eventually I went in January 2010. You must have went in a couple months before that.
Well,
right?
I went in a couple of. Actually, I went in about almost 10 years to the day. I mean, I went in when it was Halloween time,
Right.
right? Because there was a Halloween party that we did at our lovely rehab. So that's actually, I'm just thinking about that now. I think I
Yes.
was there for a couple of days and still not used to being out in society because I was locked away for
Yeah.
a few months and not experiencing. And then all of a sudden, there's all these people dancing and dressed up and comfortable, or at least some of them were comfortable. And God, I'll never forget that moment.
Sober,
when I was
like a sober dance.
Sober dance in a rehab.
Halloween, yeah.
And
Wow.
at that time, the rehab that we went to was popping, man. I mean, people were just graduating there from there and doing well and coming back and spreading the word about recovery and
Yeah.
we were just throwing parties there left and right. So that's how I remember that. It was weird, and I remember feeling I never wanted to feel this feeling again of not belonging, because I'm not someone who really suffered from that growing up. You know, I always had friends. I was always Mr. Social. And when ending up in a blackout and in a psych ward and being locked away for a while and then going back to rehab, I couldn't, I think Chris probably remember, I couldn't say 2-3 words
Yeah.
together. I couldn't, you know what I mean? I was so burnt out.
Yeah. I think you were just so probably second guessing yourself almost with every turn, everything that you
Trip
were saying.
myself up, yeah.
I remember at one point you said during waitlist groups, you said, "What is this probation? I don't know what this probation is," because you were put on probation.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And like,
no, I was talking about, I remember that. I was asking you guys
Yeah.
what felonies were.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. Like, or what would be considered a felony? What would be considered a misdemeanor? What's the difference? And I remember, Chris, you were like, "Let me explain it to you. Let me break it down."
Yeah.
You know, but I think so many people in that waitlist group really took pity on me, and I was sort of
Yeah, because you sort of you were like, I mean, you were definitely, to me, you had this, I had the impression that you were just sort of broken. Like you
Yeah.
had this experience where you were broken,
Yeah.
but I also didn't know that you were like sort of hardcore with your use too, because you were so like, I don't know what to do, man. Just tell me what to do. And then like you would do it, but like right before that, you had this hardcore benzo and marijuana and heroin binge.
Yeah.
And you're a freaking outlaw, basically. You know, going crazy. You know, but
my actions weren't really meeting the way that I was acting when you met me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no, you don't meet a lot of, hardcore junkies like we all were, following every intricate little direction given. And I was, man. I
Yeah.
wanted to get the fuck out of there.
Was
so
it
bad.
every once in a while you meet people whose bottom was just so vicious that it rocks them to their core, right?
Yeah. Their most spiritual word is okay. Like,
Exactly.
everything that's told is okay. And you do it cheerfully and you do it willingly and you just go with it. And that was really my story in the
that was
beginning.
definitely where you were at first. Yep, for
You
sure.
know?
Yeah.
And I remember from Chris, my perspective on him when I met him. I mean, I liked you right away, but Chris had this like between the I'm ready, but I'm going to do it my way,
Yep.
and arrogant about taking feedback from people because you knew how to do it. So like so many of us know.
Yeah.
And I think that was really cool seeing it break along the way. That
Yeah.
was just started getting removed bit after bit after bit.
Yeah,
and
the
I was thinking
armor.
about the other day, like, I think the most attractive thing about our relationship in the beginning was the sense of humor that we sort of had with one another in
Yeah,
rehab.
for sure.
Oh my God, man. And I got to tell you, man, if anybody is listening out there and has some friends that you're running with, keep those friends and stay sober together. You'll never forget those silly, ridiculous, whatever situations or circumstances they were. You'll never forget those stories, the best stories of my life. And I come from a history full of stories, like so many of us. Like my history is, I got so many stories, but the ones that I'm so proud of and the ones that are the most endearing to me are the ones in recovery, early recovery, but more so.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so we went through treatment together. We were in there for a little while together. You finished a little bit before I did, but then eventually we started, not right away, we started hanging out after I got out because you had already been out. And then I think we just sort of both found this path where we wanted to find out just really where the recovery was, rather than like sort of the noise that you sometimes hear at meetings and in the fellowship. Because I know I got a little bit involved in just the fellowship part, especially at first. I was 22, I think.
Super young, yeah.
Yeah, so I was really, when I was looking forward to getting out of treatment, I was looking forward to just going to meetings and meeting other young people, especially young, women my age, and like really starting getting into dating. And that was where my head was when I got out of treatment. And then, after a couple of months of just sort of like doing that, there was sort of a deeper calling. And I think that's partly because walking with you and then like also having a good sponsor and starting to meet good people in the rooms that really sort of challenged me into what's the bigger picture here? Is it going to be just about hanging out and going to the diner after the meeting, or is there some internal work that's going to happen here?
Were you asked those questions directly? Were you like really forced by your sponsor or other people are you gonna, however they brought it?
Yeah.
Were you asked those questions?
Well, my sponsor was always trying to point me toward the internal work that we're supposed to do and here to recover. And so that was common, right? And I wanted that because it sounded attractive, but like it's hard, right? It's hard to get to a point where you're like, I'm willing to do whatever, and be uncomfortable. But what happened was the guy, Yassine, came from Texas. He was my age, 23 at the time, I think, and he had 5 years sober. And he would come to these young people's meetings, and that's where I was going to. And he started sharing about the big book, and he was my age, but he would share it in a way that was really attractive and like really fun and like something that was really helping him in his life. And so when I heard that, I started hanging with him because I was like, there's something deeper to this, and he knows what's up. And so like he picked me up the next night after I met him. We went to a meeting together, and he, he had the book with him, and we started talking about the book and the steps and God and all this sort of stuff. And that was sort of, I think, what ended up pulling me out of just like the fellowship part and just hanging out, Yeah. He wasn't like, dude, like, are you ever going to do this? He didn't ask me those questions,
He was the epitome for you of attraction rather than promotion.
Totally.
Like he never sat there and said, hey, do this or and he never really talked about his experience with, because I think at some point he did share about, being a young punk in recovery, and then how he got pulled away from that by his sponsor and whatnot. But
how about you? What was the thing that sort of got you focused on the book and the message?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It was, I think the first thing that happened to me was being attracted to a solution that I thought I could take, and that wasn't bigger than me, and I certainly was not bigger than it. And it's sort of like I saw eye to eye with some of the messages I was hearing in the rooms of AA, and I didn't know what the big book was, which later became how that was the link to
the three of us right here.
The three of us. And the just FYI, if you guys don't know, the big book is the book of the AA fellowship.
Basic text,
the basic text of it.
Yeah.
And so I think a friend of mine sort of got me into the big book with a couple of passages in there that I could relate to, because in my mind it was very archaic and it was very pedestrian and just, you know what I mean? Like I didn't have a lot of opinions when I first came in, but I could tell you right now, that book you're showing me was written when? 39.
1935, 39, yeah.
Right? Or something like that.
39.
30s. I ain't about it. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. You know, it was just this sort of preconceived notion of I'm not going to understand this, and if I don't understand it, and I'm not going to be good at it, I don't want to play. You know, and so bit by bit, I started really reading, and it wasn't like, oh yeah, all of a sudden I'm going to sit down here and read the 164 pages of this text. It was these passages that I could relate to. And especially one of them that said that people in recovery are people that get together normally when out there they wouldn't mix. And that, I don't know why that became my mini spiritual awakening on what this thing that we were doing was.
We are people who would normally not mix,
Yes.
right?
Yes. But there exists among us a fellowship that's indescribably wonderful.
That's right.
And it was just like, look, I even get goosebumps now every time I quote that, because it was my experience through and through. And it doesn't have to be yours, and it doesn't have to be like that. But I don't think I've ever met anybody in recovery that didn't have an experience, fill in the blank, whatever that may be. And mine was that, you know.
So did you have like kind of like that deep resolve or deep searching, I guess, for like within, like Chris was talking about, you know, getting out of rehab and like, all right, the girls, probably something about something about a good job, something about
I need
something
to
about something about how am I gonna make money, something about where am I gonna live, where's the cool place to live.
Yeah,
like you were beyond, like
I was
you were
90% not caring about making money. 95, because I was a busboy at a diner, and I was okay with that. I was fine with that, and I ended up making friends I'll have for the rest of my life. It was one of the most interesting times of my recovery in the beginning. Women were always, I wouldn't say an issue, but I was always like, there was a time when I was like, I still would, you know, be interested in her or wanting to date her, and I did. But it didn't take over my life in the beginning. You know, and
so you were still pretty much like, you know, pretty focused on
sobriety, recovery.
Yeah, exactly.
I was.
On really.
I was, and I was
those
really
deep
seeking
things that you really need to pay attention to if you want to actually have a shot. You know what I mean?
And I was seeking what it was that redeemed me.
Yeah.
And I think I still am in a big way. You know, like I don't. Yeah, I have a relationship with my higher power, but it's still evolving, and I still try to. I sometimes try to define it, but for me, it's not really. The straight definition, the accurate definition is not there yet. And I think it's been that way from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's always attracted me about recovery, you know, the talk about God. No matter how many resentments I had towards God or things I did not understand and things of that nature. But that always attracted me from a very young age. I've always been interested in spirituality. But now, the thing with me was now I'm not scared to be sober. And this thing called spirituality lives among us here. Okay, I'll take that step.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because before I would see it and I would want what people had, but I was too scared to take the leap.
Yeah.
You know? And so now, I mean, for all of us, spirituality became the topic and still is.
And you had like a brief moments of recovery in recovery before, right?
Yeah. 100%. And it was all about war stories, literally. Right. Like I was young. I wasn't ready. I'd go to meetings. I wasn't ready. I'd leave, you know, and then go do what I do. And there's been some things that have, and these are stories we'll mention as the podcast goes on, but there's some that I cannot argue. There are some moments in my recovery before getting really, really sober that you couldn't argue that there was God behind them. You know, and it mostly had to do with different people and seeing what's happened to them and seeing how they grew and how they have spirituality in their lives, you know. And now it's interesting to me because the perspective I have now is that it's not so much that the tables have turned, but now I'm doing this podcast with two guys that have taken that leap of faith where, you know, spirituality seems to be, and I think it is, your number one priority. Which is so cool to see, you know, and I think that's one of the messages I'm so excited to bring about this thing.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that for sure.
A lot of times,
It's a good point, the mentioning of the thing about, you know, periods of sobriety in the past that there was real interactions, like spiritual, you know, situations occurring. Because, you know, like you can get really, I know for me, like, you know, it seemed like anytime I thought I had some sort of spiritual interaction, trying to get sober, then however many times I tried to get sober, and then I would go use again, you'd tell yourself, oh, that wasn't real or something, or, you know what I mean, because it didn't stick or something like that. I used to just think that unless I could stick with this sobriety thing, that like any of these experiences that happened in the past, they can't be legit, because they obviously, if they were legit, they would have been powerful enough to like pull me through or something
because
like
you
that.
sabotage them, they can't be real, or because they didn't pull you through.
Yeah, but the truth is like, you know, recovery is, you know, I mean, God intervenes, you know, and however he does, and like, we might not always stay right after that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's that process. You
That's
know,
a good point.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it still is all enveloped in the recovery, essentially, you know?
I'm sure there's people right now thinking that recovery is bullshit, basically, because it didn't work. They came in and they tried some of it, and then they went back out, and they're
look at me. I'm still using this. Didn't work for me.
Right.
All these things you told me to do, and I literally had the exact same mindset. Like, look at all the things you asked me to do. I did them honestly. I was like hurt enough to want to do it. And you told me it would get better. I feel the same.
Yeah. And I think part of the problem too, like in this day and age, is that people would only look at proof in terms of, you know, being able to quantify something. You know, like show me where the numbers are and show me that they're working and I may do it. And it's not, I realized it wasn't really about that. And I think we all realized that it wasn't really about that. You couldn't put it in numbers, right? I mean, we knew a guy that would argue in the meetings that we go to, they give 24-hour chips. And he'd argue that millions of these chips are sold, but only a few are sold for 5 years, and even less than that for 10
years,
and then 30, and then 40. And okay, I understand that from a scientific or whatever, like when you're looking at numbers. But once you get the experience, I don't think you can ever argue with the fact that it's not something to be quantified. This is not what's happening here. You know what I mean? It's not formula that we just put in a needle and shoot it up your arm, you know?
Right.
It's more than that. And
maybe one day we will get to that, right? But that's not the way that I've stayed sober.
Yeah.
But maybe one day there will be a scientific, like a pill or a thing that you can quantify that says this is recovery, but that's not what's happened for me, right? Just like circling back to, you know, what we were talking about. It's like once you got that text message, Sam, from our friend, all three of our friends, Patrick, shout out Patrick.
Hey, shout out to P,
in Austin, is he in Austin, or is it like a suburb of Austin?
Oh, it starts with an L.
Yeah.
I forgot. Suburb.
It's Austin.
Loomis.
Austin.
Laundry.
It's Texas.
Austin, Texas. Huge part of my life early in recovery, and he eventually got married and had kids, and now lives in Austin. But he sent you that he was in rehab with it, and he sent you that text message.
He did.
We are people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship that's, what is it?
Indescribably wonderful.
Indescribably wonderful. And from that text message, you guys started talking and decided that we need to read this. Let's read this together.
Yeah.
And
I wanted to know where that quote was taken from immediately.
Yeah.
Because it hit me so profoundly.
Yep. And so you guys decided to meet, and I jumped aboard, and your roommate, Gene, was right there, and he went to rehab with us. Shout out, Gene. And Yassine was there, the guy I was talking about earlier that was my age, that had 5 years sober and shared about the solution. And was there anyone else? I have a feeling there's one other person. Kevin, you remember Kevin? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I have to now remember Kevin, but keep going. I'm sure I will.
Yeah. So anyway, the 5 or 6 of us decided to meet at your house, Sam, and we made a pot of coffee and we decided to read this book together, right?
Yep.
And the rest is history to me. I think the next week we came back, and 1 or 2 other people, because we were so excited. We had such a good night hanging out, reading the book together, drinking coffee. I think it was all the coffee we drank, to be honest.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, it's the most socially acceptable drug there is, so we just kept doing it.
Yeah.
So we just kept doing it.
So like 2 people were like, I want to do that. I want to drink coffee.
Yeah, totally. We stay up till 3, 4. in the morning.
And so we
Super
read
spiritual.
it. We did it again the next week, and before we knew it, there was like 15 to 20 people in your house reading the book together.
Smoking cigarettes.
Smoking.
Oh, smoking
Those
jacks.
clouds were we were crushing.
So
cigarettes.
much
my
smoke,
God.
man.
I mean,
So
there was some sort of magic happening in that room, but there was
There's also
There
a lot
was-
of tar in that.
there
room.
was a lot. Yes, exactly what I was going to say,
There
and
was-
so much toxicity.
There was so
Right?
much
I mean-
oxygen deficiency. Like,
There was a lot of people that went home. I used to go to bed with a headache, but I'd be so lifted, you know, like I'd be so spiritually lifted, but I got this like pounding
Tylenol.
headache.
Yeah.
It was so like
spiritually lifted, but I need to take some Tylenol immediately.
Yeah. I need to go see my
cigarette smoke was
doctor.
crushing me. I had to sleep in that house. You know? Oh man, it was brutal. And then, you know, and once we started the meeting and people would come in, I think one thing I remember from those days is that our motive was always to, first of all, we had a men's meeting
Yeah.
because we knew right in the beginning.
Important.
Well, to me, it 100%. It was so, yeah.
Hey, you better be doing
Well,
the same thing.
for me, it definitely was.
Oh.
I
Yeah.
I would have been a different person.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 And I think that, you know, whether, you know, for better or for worse, however, but for me, that set off what I started getting comfortable with in recovery, which is men's meetings. So
Yeah.
although I go to co-ed meetings now, obviously, but
totally.
like that's where I'm usually comfortable. So we started that, and then people started bringing other people. Their friends started bringing friends, and enter Devin. And Devin comes in,
Yeah.
and we meet him, which I can't. We have to mention the story.
Yeah, we do.
Of
Yeah.
the
Okay.
mask. I
I
can't.
came in. I met you first, Sam. I think.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Chris, you were there. I think you came in late. You would come in late sometimes to that meeting.
Sometimes?
I remember.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember you rolling in, sitting at the chairs by the door. When you come
Okay.
in, the chairs
Yeah.
behind the couch, behind the thing. Like
Yeah, that was reserved for the late folks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was because you guys were so busy. They had to put the row of chairs against the wall back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that behind
Yeah.
the couches?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole house was just couches and couches and couches. It was one big rectangle
Yeah.
of
There
couches. And
Four
And there's
big
the
couches.
mirrors on the wall, and it like tripped me up. Made me think like that was a good
I
move to
forgot
make
about
the
those.
room look bigger.
Yeah.
with the mirrors.
Yeah. Mirrors
Man,
were-
I gotta bust out the phone in a minute and show you pictures
the
of
mirrors were crucial.
of what it looks like now. But it hasn't changed, so really it's what you remember. It's not like it looks any different. But I love the way that Chris says the story about Devin walking
yeah,
in with
yeah,
the
please
mask.
tell the story.
So.
Well, yeah, I don't remember the first night, but I remember it was Halloween actually, which is coming up. But
Was it actually on Halloween? Or was it right around the Halloween?
it was
It
right
was
around
right around
Halloween.
Sure.
Halloween. Yeah,
I mean,
because we had been almost in for a year, which just makes sense, right?
It's
Now
always the fall time.
Was it?
it was around a year because I went to rehab in around Halloween, and now it's almost that time in that year. It was fall for sure,
Oh.
and it was almost a year in when we met Devin.
That you were almost a year in sobriety. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's crazy.
yeah, I know. We're sitting around. This was a time where I was not late because I remember you coming in. We're hanging out, smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee before the meeting starts, and then you came in, Dev, and you were wearing what were you wearing?
It was a
You mean the mask?
it was a mask. It was
Yeah.
like just a
What kind of mask?
Yeah,
then?
ghoul.
A ghoul. Yeah, it was a ghoul. I always want to say a scream.
Yeah, it wasn't.
mask.
It wasn't your typical scream mask. It
I
was
thought
this
you wanted to
other-
hear him say ghoul. I was like, what was that mask you wearing?
Ghoul.
Yeah, that's it. Ghoul.
It was the ghoul.
So yeah, it was a mask. It was a Halloween mask. He's the only one wearing anything remotely like a costume, and he comes in and it's funny at first, right? Because it's a guy. Oh yeah, it's Halloween. Ha ha ha. He's coming in, but this guy just comes in and sits down and doesn't say a word to anyone. And he starts looking around, and we're all like, ha 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 ha. Ha. And after about 6 minutes, we're all like, is this guy going to take his fucking mask off? What is happening here? And the meeting starts and he keeps it on. And everyone's going around saying their name. Chris, alcoholic, addict. Sam, alcoholic, addict. And it gets to Devin. Devin says,
I'm the ghoul. I'm an alcoholic.
yeah. And we're laughing now. Yeah, we're laughing now. Can't hear, no laughing, no words.
Not one laugh.
Yeah.
No one laughed.
No one laughed. And it just went to the next part, John,
And
alcoholic.
I was smoking a cigarette with the mask on.
When you
Yeah.
said your name, or did you light it
just
after
like
that?
leading up to the start of it and during it. My whole idea was to smoke the cigarette with the mask on the whole time.
That whole thing
Yeah.
was just such a
Well,
good idea.
and my favorite part is, and then he sort of demasks himself after that. And I'm like, all right, finally he's going to demask. And he takes his mask off. I have no idea who this guy is.
This is like really my third or fourth meeting. And I was pissed. I honestly wasn't planning on taking off the mask. I was going to keep it on the entire meeting.
The whole time.
But the smoke,
The
from
smoke
the
and
cigarette
the heat.
it wouldn't escape the mask. So my eyes were like watering and burning because like it was just hot smoke just in my eyes, and I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, I gotta take this thing
Yeah.
off. This isn't gonna last.
God bless
Yeah.
every sobriety, man.
And I talked to my sponsor about it leading in. I was like, I met these dudes, like they're all pretty serious, like seem pretty cool, like more my age than kind of the meetings I'd been going to, and I was pretty excited about it. I had this idea. I was like, hey, I think that'd be a good idea to bring this mask to the meeting. He was like, oh, that's hilarious, dude. Fucking hilarious. So
Yeah.
I came in with just
The expectation that it was
I thought like
comedy.
I'm gonna be like a legend after this. Like, everyone's be like, dude,
You
Devin's
are sort of a legend in my
Devin's,
mind.
Well, that's
Devin's
true, yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Like he's this crazy dude. Like, and no one laughed. Like no one.
It was a bold move, Devin.
It was
a very
super
bold
bold.
move, and I don't think that there are many people doing that out there. So
Well, it wasn't bold that he came in with it. It was bold how long he kept it on.
yeah, I was
Right.
starting to get worried. Yeah,
Yeah. Exactly.
it was so hot in there.
You're like, who the hell do I fucking have in my house
I
right
have in my
now?
house.
Yeah, maniac, a psychotic maniac.
This house does not belong to
He
me.
says he's here to get help, but I don't believe him. I just don't believe it.
Oh man.
Yeah, so that's how we met. That's how I met Devin. Because you knew Sam before, so Sam probably was like, "Oh, that's
Well,
Dev."
no,
Yeah.
I literally had met Sam at that meeting. I mean,
A couple of weeks before that.
Yeah,
A couple
because-
weeks
because,
before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Carlos.
I don't remember meeting you, so that was my first introduction
Yeah,
to you.
I
so.
didn't. I mean, I was not a social
person.
No,
Yeah.
dude. I mean, I was just kept to
Not
myself.
a social butterfly, but super friendly,
But once,
super
once
like
I like if like a one-on-one thing,
yeah.
Yeah.
like the big group stuff.
Yeah, you were just super friendly.
Never worked, but
yeah.
like Carlos rolled me in because the
Shout
the
out
treat-
Carlos.
the-
Yeah,
shout
Carlito.
out to Carlito, baby.
Carlito, man.
Hope the
Yeah.
family's well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I have
we
a
tried.
funny
We're
story
gonna have
about
to tell him to
Carlos.
hear that.
Yeah, I have a funny story about Carlos, but I'll share it another time. Okay.
Yeah,
That's right.
we-
He used to be Chris's
Roommate, yeah.
in rehab.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he was. Yeah, we tried to go to the treatment center meeting.
Yeah.
And then it was like full, whatever it was. And then
late,
Carlos was
yeah.
like, let's go to this other meeting, dude. This meeting's whack. And then I met you outside.
So when you first went, what did you think? When you were you like,
Well,
this
I
is
was
cool, or-
excited
You were.
that you could smoke there.
Yes,
It's
that was half the
it's so
attraction.
true.
Like that was the attraction of the group that I started going to was because you could smoke inside.
Your home group at
My
the
home
time.
group.
Yeah,
My home
yeah.
group at the time was a smoking meeting.
Still
And
is, right?
and
Yeah.
so it was just like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
I'm gonna smoke 9 cigarettes in an hour.
We never talk about the importance of smoking when you first come in. Like,
It's
you know,
just-
if you had been a smoker, like, every now and again, maybe 1 out of 20 people I meet doesn't smoke cigarettes, never has, but they happen to be an alcoholic or even a drug addict, which is weirder to me. But most of the people that come in for me are, smokers, and so of course, like it was so important to have a meeting like that,
It's very important.
and never-ending coffee.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so that was, but yeah, and with the environment, like you guys already talked about. I mean, I could, you could just tell there's there's camaraderie. You know what I mean? But,
Yeah.
but there was also it was a different kind
Yeah.
of thing. Like it was
There was
just
an excitement about recovery there.
yeah,
underlying it
because
all.
there's just so many
Yeah.
people that really didn't know much. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions being asked. You know, and I was so used to meetings being about, kind of more like being preached to or something.
Totally.
Someone just being like,
Right.
this is what you do and this is how it goes and these are things to look for and these are the steps that you do to kind of apply to that. And it was it's not like, I'm not trying to not like I learned stuff. I learned a lot of stuff from that, but there was just never like, hey guys, like what do we think about this? Do we know? And then and then someone answering to that question. Yeah, I don't know. I thought, I'm like, what is this?
Right,
Like,
without this
like
sense
this dude's
of
asking,
knowledge
where's
or-
the one guy to just tell you how it is, and we can move on from this.
Yeah, we didn't
Right.
have that guy.
You know what I mean?
Right.
We didn't have that guy. in
So
our
that
meeting.
was kind of interesting,
Yeah.
and so, and Yeah, and I picked up a service position.
Immediately.
Yeah,
did,
like right
yeah.
away. Like there was like a meeting afterwards, and like everyone was out in that back porch, like crowded, like that little.
Oh man, I can't believe that deck didn't
that
collapse.
little deck, man,
Yeah.
and like
yeah.
and dude, like all of
forgot
us
about
would
the
be
deck.
just like crammed out there, like
Yeah.
smoking, dude. And
Yeah.
it was chilly
We all wanted fresh air, but we lit up a cigarette as we got out there. Yeah.
immediately. Dude, there's nothing like a nice warm cigarette in the lungs on like, a fall day.
But
Yeah.
it was the fall when you started coming around. I remember that
Yeah.
clearly. So what was Chris, break down, because that was pretty unique and still is to this day, but the format of that meeting when we started it, what was the format as far as you remember?
Yeah, I mean, that was the other sort of unique thing about it that I really liked was that it was we would have we tried to keep it as informal as possible, where it wasn't like, all right, one person shares and then one person doesn't. So,
Yeah.
or once you share, then you're done. So like a lot of times it felt like like a literal discussion or a conversation about, what we're reading or what someone brings up. And I always thought that was sort of a strong feature. I always enjoyed it myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And there were questions like, because we were like, I get back to the point of, reading, reading a book that was written such a long time ago, and so many of us were, all of us were brand new at this thing. I think, minus Yassine, who knew a lot about the book, so we just throw questions at this young man, and he, without having the sort of aura of knowledge and here's what I know, here's what you need to know, like Devin was sharing about, and I think we kept up with the spirit of that as the years moved
Yeah.
along with that
We
meeting.
tried to, yeah,
We
for
tried
sure.
to. We try our best. God, man, I would so love to see more meetings about recovery that way.
Yeah.
And we had something special there that I don't know if it'll work a lot in different meetings and different formats, but we had this halftime when we'd put anything on the table that was ailing us or hurting us or we couldn't. And that was so important, so many of us that were losing people in our life or that we were coming up on some, memories that we didn't know how to deal with in early sobriety. And that was so profound as well for so many people. I think that particular reason or that particular thing was the reason that a lot of people kept coming back.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be like, man, I can share about that at the halftime at that meeting. And at some point we lost that, I think. But
How many halftime shares did you make?
what do you mean? Like how many have I shared in?
Yeah.
In the beginning, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm trying to think. I'm like, I don't know if I did many of those.
I don't even know if you've ever done it. Have you?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Wow.
Public speaking, man. No good for me.
I mean, you've shared plenty of times.
Yeah.
I've heard,
Yeah.
but
I don't know, but like on some halftime talk,
yeah, like getting real.
getting real. I'm talking
Getting
real,
real.
Getting real, as
Check
my
that,
sponsor
the
calls it.
R rail.
Yeah. He makes fun of me by saying I tell
Get
people
real.
you got to get real, and I do something with like my mouth when I say R. When I say the R part, it's like get real. Like I do like a twist of my lip or something.
Little side mouth.
Yeah, a little side mouth action.
Nice.
So
Anyway, sorry about that detour.
This was good stuff, man. It's really good stuff. Man,
But yeah.
I tell you, boys, I'm really excited about this podcast. I think,
Yeah, I mean,
I prayed about this last night. And because I felt, and I told my wife, I was like, I really want to be into this. Like, I really want to be on fire with this. And I prayed about it. And then today I felt like, is this going to work? Like, how is this? But okay, all right, we'll continue praying. We'll continue trying it out. And then we came in today and did the jingle thing and then started this podcast. It's just so easy talking to you guys. It's so easy. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I feel like we're on to something. I think this is good.
Yeah. If anything else, man, this is fun for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe
So-
my expectations are just too high. I keep imagining this one guy in Alaska
Yeah.
going
yeah.
like,
that's your
what?
thing. Yeah.
I don't know why this
you
it's
do,
like
you
it's
do
like
go
this,
back to Alaska a lot.
well, this one guy, I can even describe the apartment that he's in.
Oh,
It's just
apartment.
weird.
Dude, where does he live?
Well, I don't know the different cities in Alaska.
Yeah, that's okay. But like
It's
the
just-
apartment though, like what kind of apartment is
like
it?
it's a white building,
Yeah.
and he's like in a place where there's a lot of paintings, and he's just listening
A
to
lot
this
of paintings?
Yeah, a lot of paintings, like just
Like what kind
cheap,
of art? Just cheap stuff.
Cheap
cheap
art.
stuff that
good-
he's bought like throughout the years
You
of
find at
alcoholism.
Goodwill
yeah,
or something.
just like alcoholic buying paintings left and right, and now he has to sit there.
Did you buy a lot of paintings
Stare- no.
when you were like? I never bought art. Like what?
No,
Close.
yeah,
Close.
but he
Not
does live
even
in Alaska.
close.
There's but a few things you can do in Alaska, so I guess
Yeah,
The
so-
meetings
so,
are- the
so
meetings
he's an
are-
alcoholic art aficionado.
Well, no, you made him an art aficionado. I wasn't saying he's an art aficionado. He just happened to have a lot of
He
paintings.
bought art because he thought he needed to have art in the
I see.
house.
Maybe he thought
Just
he
like
needed-
my office, I have an office now. I feel like I need to buy art to have
Have
in
you?
the office.
Have you bought art in your
I
office?
have, and
Oh,
they're
nice.
terrible paintings, and they're
Is
cheap.
it the ones that say teamwork?
No, well, I haven't gotten that far, but I
There's a
will
guy
if I have
planting
to.
a flag on the
Yeah.
top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every successful journey starts with the first step. It has like a picture of like a bridge going over like a.
But they're always so good. You know?
Yeah.
I'm always reading them, going like,
kind
that's
of
pretty
like
good.
you're like
Yeah.
that is a good little token of
Keep that in my back
that's a little
pocket. I
wisdom
like
right
that.
there.
Yeah.
It's a little wisdom bomb. Yeah, I
Yeah.
date this guy a little better.
There was one there was oh man, I can't think of it, but anyway, I'll
So
bring
the
it next
Alaska
week.
guy. Well, yeah,
No, I just have this like I don't know. It's,
just that he would. Yeah, I mean
that he would
I'm
listen
with
to
you,
this
man.
and
Yeah.
be like, you know what, man, like I'm not alone. You know.
Yeah.
And this is really maybe the point of doing this. I mean, and Chris and I were real about this in terms of like, if nobody ends up listening to this thing, and it's just us hanging out on a Monday or Tuesday, it's good enough.
Yeah.
It's fun. And being in the studio for me is like, God, this is heaven, man. Beautiful. It's good stuff. But we definitely, going back to that point, we definitely want feedback, and we want to hear from you guys. We'll probably publish this and some other episodes, so hopefully you guys will listen to them. And
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we know
we'll be
this.
bringing guests on to talk about topics that we're interested in that range from what we mentioned in the beginning, anything from spirituality to, even digging deep in terms of like some random topic that you can think about. How would someone not be spiritual and stay sober? Is that possible?
Ooh.
Random things like that. Like what
Yeah.
keeps me coming to AA?
Yeah, yeah.
Or what keeps me coming to meetings?
And that's the thing we should add too, is that we're not
Yes,
affiliated.
I wanted to ask you to add that.
Yeah, we're not affiliated with any different recovery organizations or 12-step organizations. We all have significant experience being in these recovery organizations, but this podcast and these recordings and these episodes aren't affiliated in any way. So we want to make sure that people don't listen to this and mistake it as something that comes from one of these big 12-step organizations or any of these other recovery organizations. We are our own thing. We are our own thing.
Yeah. The Sober Pod.
Yeah, we're the Sober Pod.
Yeah, that's who
Yep.
we are.
So thanks for listening, guys. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you
Yeah.
so much. Yep. Have a good night, you all. We love you very much,
Yeah.
and may God be with you.
thesoberpod@gmail.com.
Yeah, write us.
Holla.
Holla.
Holla, holla.
Bye.
Launching off now. Pod.